All right. We're going to call the meeting to order. Do some roll call. Dave Evans.
Here.
Claire Parsion.
Here.
Darren Rios.
Here.
Deb Stacy.
Here.
John Timmerman here. Minutes.
Okay. Allen Township Zoning Commission, May 2nd, 2024. Attendance: Dave Evans, Claire Pargin, Deb Stacy, John Timmerman. Darren Rios was absent. Deb Stacy, Allen Township Zoning Commission Secretary, read the April 29th, 2024 minutes. Motion 24-04-19M. Claire Pargin moved to approve the Allen Township Zoning Commission minutes from the April 29th, 2024 meeting. Dave Evans moved to second the motion. Motion passed. The Allen Township Zoning Commission discussed solar energy. Matt from Hancock County Regional Planning provided information on solar energy. He also added input for a section on solar energy for Washington Township's zoning resolution. Items included in the discussion included accessory use, primary use, lot coverage by solar panels, height of solar panels, roof/structure mounted solar energy systems, and the amount of energy generated per a given size of an installation. John Timmerman, Allen Township Zoning Commission Chairman, asked for input from guests several times during the meeting. Numerous responses were given back to the commission. The next Zoning Commission meeting will be on May 9th at 5 o'clock. Topics will include solar and wind energy in addition to the growth of non-conforming uses. Motion 24-04-20M. John Timmerman moved to enter into executive session for the discussion of litigation against the Zoning Commission. Dave Evans seconded the motion. On roll call vote, the members voted to enter into executive session. Dave Evans, yes. Claire Pargin, yes. Deb Stacy, yes. John Timmerman, yes. Motion passed, and the Zoning Commission went into executive session at 7:08 p.m. Motion 24-04-21M. John Timmerman moved to leave executive session and return to the regular meeting with no action taken at 7:41 p.m. Dave Evans seconded the motion. Motion passed. Motion 24-04-22M. Claire Pargin moved to adjourn the meeting. Dave Evans seconded the motion. Motion passed. Could I have a motion to approve the
I move
minutes?
to accept the minutes.
Okay, there's John. And Claire, I saw your hand. And everyone in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Motion passed. Okay, and your sign.
All right. So last time we were looking at solar. I feel like we got through pretty well the accessory use, and we were into primary use. Is that how everybody else remembers it?
Yeah.
I did a little research on the 10 kilowatts. I gotta find the picture back. How large is a 10 kilowatt solar system? Just a quick Google search. It says it's between 440 and 475 square feet of roof space. So that's for 10 kilowatts, which was the limit for residential, or not accessory use or small solar system. So that's like way less than an eighth of an acre even. And we allotted a half of an acre. So
We can revisit that.
yeah.
What did you, what was that number?
440 to 475 square feet.
That's to produce 10.
Produce 10 kilowatts. And then it says that 10 kilowatts is enough to power an average 2,000 square foot home. So. I don't know if we up that at all, or I feel like most people feel like 2,000 the average size home at this point. So I don't know if we're going to go up to like 15 or anything crazy like that, but just throwing it out there as an idea.
Yeah, especially when you have a better grasp on how much space is being used. Yeah, and 2,000 is an average size home, but there are many that are a lot bigger than that.
Right.
So, especially when they're able to build out with a lot of room around them, they're more likely to get big houses.
Right. So I'd probably go up to 15,000 then.
15 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Some of the information I was looking at was basically pretty much any given home, you have enough roof space or enough panels to power that home. So obviously a larger home is going to have more roof area to cover. So whether it's a smaller home or a larger home, there's enough on the roof to power that home.
But if you limit it to 10, it doesn't matter how much room they have
True.
on their roof, they could only do 10. So if you,
So we were talking 10.
Yeah. I think well, 10 or 12 or 10 or 15 or whatever number you choose.
Yeah.
I think there's adequate room on most houses to put 15 kilowatts up there.
Okay.
So I don't know that you can say it has to be roof mounted. I don't know if we want to say it has to be roof
Okay.
mounted.
Yeah, because part of it might have to do with like the aesthetics. Let's say the south side of your house is facing the road.
Sure.
You don't want to have the panels on the front.
And that's fair. I don't disagree. I think most people in general, aside from the south facing, whatever, would prefer to roof mount it. I think it looks better typically, but so.
are we all working off the same document?
Oh, sorry.
Washington Township was mine says draft, it's not Washington.
I think draft is, yeah, we've got the same one, so it's section 20.
Yeah.
Section 21.
It
You
says
got
section
four different
21
ones.
solar energy.
So,
21?
At the top it says general provisions in section 21.
Oh,
That's
okay,
not the one you're looking at. Wait.
wait a minute, this one?
Well, there's
That's the one.
there's
Yep.
two.
No, that's not
There's two that are Washington.
That's,
That's it. I wrote Washington Township on it. That's what I've been using.
okay. So,
No,
They
the only-
read the same.
They-
as long as they read the same.
They-
we
Right.
can-
They're the same. One has wind on it. The other one does not have wind. So it's the same document.
Okay, then we're cool.
So some things with going along with doing some research. I said for R1, do we want to say that it has to be roof mounted? And the fact that you're in smaller lots. I mean, I don't know that they'd have room to do, ground mounted, but it was just a thought. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees. I don't know if I'm 100% set on it. Talking point more than anything. So.
Well, if you have it that's on the roof, that way they still have space for their yard. Instead of having solar panels.
Again, I think most people are going to just choose to go roof mounted. I don't know whether you have to create a rule saying it has to be, but it was just I agree. I don't think people are gonna take up their yard too quickly.
Yeah.
They don't have much yard.
And I think we have provisions in place if it is in the yard, they can't go over so tall and that sort of thing.
Right.
So,
So maybe let it go. It's
I
their
guess I'm
yard.
just thinking if they wanna produce enough electricity for themselves,
Yep.
and the only way they can do it good is in the backyard. That's just my thought.
Okay. I don't necessarily think it has to be that. I was just
Right.
talking point.
Yep.
What did we decide on setbacks? On Washington, it says 10 feet from the nearest property line. And I didn't cross it out, so I'm inclined to think we left it at 10.
Yes.
It's fairly close.
I think that's pretty close, and I think that our setbacks on page 34 for residential is 12 feet for like any structure, and in A1 it would be 20 feet. I think that probably just building a little space from your neighbors on that is not a bad thing to just follow those same setback regulations. Based on that 440 square feet to 475, I rounded it up to 500 and doubled it. I think maybe 1,000 square feet is sufficient. I don't know why they would go, I mean, if they're limited by the 15 kilowatts, I don't know why they ever exceed that anyways. Cindy, are we moving all over the place? Are you doing okay?
No, I'm getting it figured out. I wanted to make sure I was at
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
Because I have to edit these later.
I know,
can't
that's
remember
why I
where-
tried to pause if you needed me to.
I was doing editing this afternoon. There are a couple of places I was going, and I just put yellow highlight on them because I can't remember or figure out what I was supposed to be doing there, so we can rediscuss them. Or the things that we never quite settled.
Yeah.
A couple of things. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to have to do that very often though, so.
Right.
Okay, I'm good now. Just listening.
Did we settle on like the district setbacks? Does everybody like that idea from the property lines
You're talking about the 10 foot?
instead of 10 foot
To go to, move that to 20.
for A1, but
For
in
A1.
R1 it would be, I think it's 12 as I recall. And 12 is from the side yard, but you'd have a different setback from the back as I recall. We don't have an R2 anymore.
So you're looking at subparagraph D, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or 4?
Number 4,
D.
D, I think, yeah.
So how do you want it to read then?
I would follow the same setbacks that we have on that page 34, the area and bulk.
Some of the things in there, they indicate that side yards can be used for parking and such. Do you want to, like for multifamily, and some of the business things? Are you okay if these are in the side yard setbacks? We have, clearly they can't be in the front yards, but if side yards okay?
If they're big enough.
Does it really lend itself to the use of the multifamily units? I mean,
I have no idea on that.
well,
Multifamily units. You're saying to have
because,
solar?
right, I question
that it's gonna be that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Businesses though, the business districts, they specifically say they can have stuff in their setbacks. Do we want to identify that things can't be in their setbacks in the front? Definitely, we have it in there.
right.
Do we wanna have them not have it in their setbacks on the sides? Only in the back?
For solar, you're
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
I think probably.
We leave it in the back.
I think in general, people's side yards aren't that huge that you're gonna have, that it's gonna
Right.
look nice
Right.
there.
Right.
The next line, Cindy says, shall not exceed a half of an acre.
Mhm.
Again, that's why, that's huge compared to what they need to be. So, I think, I mean, again, 500 square feet is roughly what's needed for 10 kilowatts. If we go up to 15 kilowatts, you're at 750.
What's a quarter acre, how many square feet?
This is way less than an acre.
10,000, a little over 10,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
An acre is 43,000.
So you're like a tenth of a quarter of an acre. So it's small.
Mhm.
That's needed. So
It's gonna sound like a stupid question, and it definitely comes from being uneducated about this, that's why I'm asking it. When we look at the area that they need, are they always close together, or can they have panels that are more spread out, like if they have a tree, an area that's sort of got foliage that they want to put chunks in places and have them all connected together? Do they have to be all together? I wouldn't think
I
so.
wouldn't think they'd have to be.
So if we compact it down into too small a space, then we're gonna have our zoning inspector trying to figure out if how many, the space, then add this space, then that space, to see if they've gone over. If you just sort of go by a smaller space in a half acre, for sure, but then also the maximum amount that they can have for output, I think it'll solve itself. Even though, they may be able to use a lot more, they have a lot more space left to use, but they can't produce any more out of it, so they won't use it. Does that make sense? Both is a check and a balance on each other.
Yes, it does make
To
sense.
to not say that again.
To say have a quarter acre, but they can't produce more than 10 kilowatts or 15 kilowatts, that'll limit how much that quarter acre they're going to cover. But it would also give them the ability to spread out on their quarter acre if they need to, without having our zoning inspector have to get pretty worried about, well, this took this many square feet, and this took this many square feet, add them all together. That's just a recipe for somebody to have a disagreement about what the calculation.
That makes sense, I think.
But I think if you have that limit of 15
Kill.
kilowatts,
Yeah.
they're not gonna be able to
Right.
fill up a quarter acre, even if
Right.
they can't be more than a quarter acre.
Right.
Mhm.
How do you, I'm looking at this from because this will come up again when we go to primary use. How do we regulate who's actually going out there and monitoring that they only have however many kilowatts? It'd be a lot easier to monitor acreage at that point.
Good point.
So,
Okay.
so similarly here, I think it's important to probably have a physical size as well,
Okay.
because it's going to come up next.
So a quarter acre is obviously too much.
An eighth of an acre is over 5,000 square feet. And we only need like 750 square feet.
So instead of saying in portions of acres, do you wanna say how many square feet can be used? Because we do use the square foot measurements for how much lot coverage can be used and
Mhm.
size of floor plans and stuff.
Yeah, that would work a lot better.
It'd be-
Since we're getting this small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Go with the
That would
smaller.
be simple
Yeah.
enough.
So number 5, change that to so many square feet.
I think so.
How many, what were you thinking?
Um,
What were you thinking, 15,000?
well, if we, 15 kilowatts
Yeah.
would be roughly 750 square feet. So if you go up to 1,000 square feet, that covers it. And I don't know if for some reason anybody wants to go a little bit higher than that, but
Then change it to 1,000.
according to my Google search, that covers it. So
That should be planned.
go with that then.
I mean, that's enough for 20 kilowatts, so.
Right. Should they be required a screen around that?
A fence of some kind.
Maybe, but screening that will obliterate the view could obliterate the sun, which could
I
be
know.
counterproductive.
I know.
So,
Well, their screening's allowed to be up to what, 2 feet off the property line, and these have to be 20 feet back. So the sun should clear the. I get your point.
yeah, we just have to be careful that whatever you put in doesn't make it so that it makes them non-capable of putting them in. Then you'll have a challenge because what you've set up makes it impossible. So as, makes some good sense that if they can be that 2 feet off the line with their fence, they have to be 20 feet back, that shouldn't be a problem. Do you want to have fences? Do you want to just require screening? And then we have definition of screening that can be, foliage, it can be bushes, trees, pine trees.
I think if you ask your neighbor would prefer bushes and whatnot to block the view more than.
I do. Screening.
Yeah.
Okay. And where do you want to put that? Another paragraph on there?
Well, yeah, I think so, and I think it'd have to go with ground/pole mounted because if they put them on their roof, they don't need screening.
That would get tricky.
Yeah. I wrote down cannot cross property lines, and I know you brought up if somebody has like an outbuilding on one property. Is that where you would have a variance possibly, or where did we end up on that? What was the deciding factor?
I don't know that we had a deciding factor on that. We were just discussing the fact that it could be, if somebody wants to power all of their buildings with solar, their house and their garage or barn or shop or something, and they're on different parcels, is that going to be permitted?
Would that be a variance option at that point?
No.
No.
Because there are specific rules for it, and it's not something that, the only way it could be a variance is if when zoning goes in, it already exists that they're on two separate parcels.
Right.
If they come along and they set it up and put it on two separate parcels, they've created their own problem. That's not something you can get a variance for. You only get a variance if it's out of your control, the hardship. So,
I guess where my question
we
was
could
going,
put it under conditional use. That they have to come then and get a conditional use to have it on another parcel, before more than one. Then it comes before you guys, they explain the situation, and you can decide. Instead of going to the BZA as a variance. Now, it would go as a variance probably if you don't put anything in here about a conditional use. The situation where it already exists that they have two parcels, then it would go to the BZA as a variance.
Okay.
But if you put it in as conditional use, whether it existed before or not, it would still come before you and be treated the same way as a conditional use. So this way we won't end up with two different boards looking at this one system idea. It'll always come to this board, the commission who's writing the policies. Then they get conditional use.
I think so.
Where do we have, where is that?
Where I don't know that it says any conditional use stuff on this. Number 1 says solar energy system may be conditionally permitted in all zoning districts.
Where does it say about the single lot?
I don't know that it did. I think that was just something we were discussing possibly.
If it's not actually in here already, or if we haven't added it, it says it has to be on one parcel or one lot, then the conditional use will already pick up anything that anybody comes in wants one, and you'll be able to look and see if they're building their own little country out there, or if they really are just looking at their own outbuildings. You know, you don't really want a compound developing these
Okay.
solar and all that.
So anytime somebody wants to put one in, since it's, everything is conditionally permitted, if anybody wants to put one in, they have to come to the board, what you're
It's a
saying.
conditional use.
Last thing I had for accessory use, like if a business wanted to put in solar panels, that's an accessory use still
Is it for their building?
for their facility, I guess?
I think it is, yeah.
So,
But it's theirs and they run it, not somebody else running it for them.
right,
That,
Okay.
that would be a
That'd be-
non-accessory use.
if they own it and they're operating it, it's theirs, it's an accessory use. And then they would play by these same rules. So this isn't strictly residential, this is accessory.
It's accessory to the building.
Okay.
And being accessory, I guess we're gonna have to. The definition of accessory. Yeah, definitions of accessory and principal solar, we may want to clarify in there that, that the accessory use is part of, belongs to and is operated by the property owner.
Yep. That's everything I had for accessory use. What's that?
It was helpful.
Did you want to leave that the non-functioning equipment has to be gone by 12 months? You want to have a 12-month period? I think that was something that was discussed, the longer, shorter. How long does it take for them to become, for solar panels to become dangerous if they're sitting there? If they sit for a year, do they start to deteriorate to the point where they have issues? If they need to be removed quicker than that?
Depends why they're not functioning. You know, like, I mean, if they get hit by a bunch of hail or car runs into them, I assume there's something in them that you don't want leaking on the ground for a year.
Remember,
12 months is, I think, too long.
it is especially something.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, it almost seems like that's something the EPA would be involved in. If
They
it was
really
a dangerous chemical. Oh,
I mean, in reality, like, if it's leaking in your backyard, when's the last time the EPA stopped by your house? They don't.
That's a double-edged sword. You don't really want them stopping by your house or anything. So,
Well, we had discussed the other time that every other year,
Well, that
check
would be,
on it.
that'd be a check-in to see if it is functioning.
Right.
But I think if it's obvious they're not functioning, then
Get rid of it, yeah,
yeah.
the safety issue.
so how quickly would we require them to get rid of it? I mean, if we find out that it's not functioning in January, chances of being able to pull them and get them out of there are probably slim
Right.
until like March, right?
Right.
So maybe something needs to be put in there if it's a dangerous situation or something that's leaking around.
I'd go for it.
It almost has to be like the lead that, I mean, at least to stop the leaking contaminants in the ground.
Right.
So the Delaware resolution, it makes reference, may stand no longer than 3 months following abandonment. So when it ceases transmission,
Mhm.
is 30 days, 30 consecutive days. So I think those are a little more,
Then you better
make
wanna
more
go with-
sense.
So do you wanna drop that from 12 to something smaller then?
I would. I'd drop it to 3 months.
3 months.
I don't know if you can put in, if there's a known leak sooner. I don't know what kind of,
I'm not sure who, we're gonna have somebody then who's qualified to determine that.
exactly.
You know, is your zoning inspector going to be somebody who's comfortable saying that's a hazardous chemical leaking out of there, or that's water running off, or, so. I'm not sure how you would enforce that,
Right,
is my concern.
right. I think the way you would enforce it, if you would enforce it, is if there was obviously damage to the solar panels, you would have to do like a soil sample test or something.
Or just, if they, you know, they have 3 months to get rid of them, if there's nothing that says we can't immediately report them to the health department and the EPA to say, check on this and see if there's a problem there, because
Right.
they have to do that, then they have to make the test. So, and I
So
don't
if we
think we
have
need to
reason-
have that in here, that's
Okay.
just policy.
Okay.
That, you know, we see something that looks like a damage, and that's something that a zoning inspector will do. If they, are, zoning inspectors, a lot of them sort of cruise around, look and see what's going on, to see if people are building things nobody told them about. But occasionally they'll see, you know, tarry stuff in a ditch, then they know that somebody's septic system has failed. They can call the health department and say, we've got a problem in a ditch here, come test places to find, and make the complaint, so. It's really, you get a boots on the ground person, sort of like Tony does for the trustees.
Right.
They, you know, it'd be one more person doing that.
Anybody have anything else for accessory use?
Well, we have the definition of accessory solar energy system on, do you need to off that there where it says?
That would have to be updated then.
So you wanna change that to 20?
I would go to like 15. If 10 was good for a 2,000 square foot house, 15 should be good for a 3,000 square foot house.
We want to change that to 15.
That's what I would recommend.
It's two in the one I've got, definitions,
Definitions.
Oh, the definitions.
accessory solar energy system.
Yeah, 10.
Change 15.
This is the second. There you go.
And I did not,
And we're gonna take everything out after the, for electricity and friends, is that what we were doing?
where you at again? Still an accessory use?
Yes, down to a system. So we would take out related storage volume of less than or equal to 240 gallons, or has a collector area of less than or equal to 1,000 square feet for thermal, as intended for to primarily reduce on-site consumption of utility power. I think
Are we removing it because we don't understand it? Is that,
Well-
is that the mentality?
a little, because I just don't think it applies to solar stuff. I think it applies to some other things.
I guess my thought is just in case it's something we don't know, are we wrong in leaving it in there?
Well,
I get
you
you.
can be, yeah.
You can be wrong in leaving it in there.
Mhm. See, the Delaware one is not written with, which came from the template that was developed by environmental attorneys for the Ohio Township Trustee Association. This one that we're using for Washington Township was developed by regional planning.
Okay.
And I mean, and Matt sat here and said, I'm not an expert in this.
Right.
So I'm a little worried that they put things together that they found without knowing for sure how they fit together either, which worries me just a little bit on some of these things that nobody can explain. Because the bottom line is we have to be able to explain them. You have to know what they mean and why they apply. And if we can't get to that, we shouldn't have that in there as a regulation.
That's fine.
So,
They would still be regulated at 10, 15 kilowatts and 1,000 square feet.
Mhm.
So
so we're questioning what that 240 gallons.
we don't even know what
Yeah.
it means.
Part of me, I mean, I don't know what it means, but I kind of wonder if it's like solar water heating.
And hydro.
Yeah. 'Cause, you know, like in Florida, they heat pool water on their roofs. What looks
Yeah.
You have an input there.
Do you know what it is?
Not 100%, but you might want to relate it to geothermal, because there's directional boring that they do for those lines. So that's 3 feet down and then all horizontally on them. So you don't think about it that way. It's gonna hit anything.
It's not solar at that point though. It's
But you can still heat water from the sun through those lines.
underground. It's seeing the
So
sun.
you heat the water and that's it. That's why there's a GPM gallons put in there.
Okay.
So, you know, look into it.
So I think they probably took some of this stuff from alternative methods and maybe tagged some things in that we weren't really planning to put in. We don't have anything in the House Bill 52 that said that you guys had the ability to regulate geothermal or any only wind and solar. So I'm not as comfortable with this one.
Okay.
So
How hard is it? Let's pretend someone wants to put it in later. How hard is it to add that later?
you don't have the authority to add it. You don't have the authority to regulate it. You only have the authority to do what statute has given you specific authority to do. And statute has specifically said you have the authority to regulate through zoning, wind and solar under the certain thresholds that are set there.
I'm saying, what if there is a solar panel that you're using the sun to heat water? That's solar power at that point. What if somebody does want to put that in at some point?
I don't think that fits the definition of solar that they have, that you guys have the ability to regulate, but that's more geothermal. They drill down, get warm water. It's a completely different kind of technology
Then what it's
than what
allowed.
solar is. Yeah, so I don't think you can regulate it. You can try, but then you run the risk of having somebody challenge it. If it gets challenged, then you risk the stuff that you know you were able to do. So we don't want to, you don't want to go too far out there on a limb on something and,
Okay.
and end up making everything vulnerable.
Well, let's plan on taking that out then. I'm gonna make the thermal portion of it. I'm gonna do a little more research on what that is maybe, and
Yeah.
maybe there's a way to, if we come up with a reason to add it back in, but for the sake of closing this section up, I say we take it out.
Yeah, I think I would take out down to is intended to primarily reduce on-site consumption of utility power. That's where we'd start again it as is intended.
Okay.
Take out, starting at the word or right after for electricity and parens. And keep taking out till you get down to is intended to primarily reduce. So it's about 2.5 lines.
What were you saying about friends?
There are parens there around the electricity,
Parentheses.
for electricity.
Oh, parentheses.
Even friends.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
Parentheses.
That's a word that's hard for me to say. I would say
Parentheses.
friends.
Primary reduce. Are we getting
And,
on-site consumption?
once we get to the word is intended, we stay, we keep that.
Oh,
Right,
Right. So it'll read that, which has a rated capacity of less than or equal to 15 kilowatts for electricity and is intended, yeah, should have the word and too.
okay.
And is intended to primarily reduce on-site consumption of utility power.
Okay.
Yeah, this, we read on, it says electrical or thermal power solely. I don't know that you have the ability to regulate thermal power.
Okay. Is that it now for accessory use? Okay. Cindy, you good at that point?
Yeah.
Wasn't too convincing. For primary use, are we kind of copying as far as layout on the way through? Is that kind of how you planned on attacking this?
I would, like, these definitions that are in here are gonna come out and go up into your definition section.
Yep.
They won't be in this section, so.
Yep.
That saves a lot of the, confusion portion here. Yeah, I guess you'd have to, you just,
You just kind of change specs and keep going with the same layout?
you know, the thing is, one of the big things that I'm finding that's different between like Delaware or that template and Washington is that there is no non-accessory use in here. It's all accessory use, that's all they have.
That's all yeah.
Because they haven't,
Well, in here, I think it said something, the very last sentence of the first
you
paragraph.
can't forbid it, but you can not. Okay, I can't figure out why they have in this one are not permitted, and then they have non-accessory uses. It's contradictory, right?
Say that again.
Well, in this Washington Township one,
Yep.
it says are not permitted, which I think is bad, to say anything is absolutely not permitted.
Right.
But then they have a whole big section on how you regulate it. But if it's not permitted,
Right.
why is it in
They
there?
have a section on how it's regulated.
Sure. The non-accessory.
It's not necessary, it's principal.
The principal solar is,
What calls out principal solar exclusively? Where we?
it's a second definition, principal solar energy production.
Oh, you're
facility.
saying it's got a definition.
It's got a definition.
Yes,
Why? If it's not permitted.
to make it clear what
you
is
can't do.
not permitted.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just saying an attorney didn't write this legislation right here and it's getting really mucky.
Okay.
Attorneys did write this one over here and so sure. So keep working on it. See if we can unmuck it.
Okay.
And that was with an M, in case anybody didn't find it properly. Because I would not say the other one. It's not meeting.
So we're going to figure out principal solar energy.
You want to read that, Dave?
Sure. Principal solar energy production facility. An area of land or other area used for a solar collection system principally used to capture solar energy and convert it to electrical energy. Large solar energy production facilities consist of one or more freestanding ground or roof-mounted solar collector devices, solar-related equipment, and other accessory structures and buildings, including light reflectors, concentrators, heat exchangers, substations, electrical infrastructure, transmission lines, and other appurtenant structures and facilities which has a rated capacity of more than 10 kilowatts for electricity or rated storage volume of the system of more than 240 gallons, which,
Probably cost
or that has a collector area of more than 1,000 square feet for thermal.
Yeah.
Is that your recommendation again, that last two lines
Yeah,
there?
I think it's combining, things that aren't actually solar.
The interesting part is the very first sentence, at the very end it says, capture solar energy and convert it into electrical energy. It doesn't say transfer it into thermal energy.
Where are you at?
Under the first sentence of principal solar of the definition,
Uh-huh.
the very last 5 words says to convert into electrical energy. It doesn't say thermal energy.
Right.
So
So I think that stuff is,
that already contradicts what their
they
definition
probably
is.
took out the thermal up here, and then they didn't read all the way through and get the rest of it.
So. So Cindy, what works best for you on creating this? I have plenty of notes on this as well,
What?
on what I would say for primary use.
Okay.
I mean, we need to come up with height again, screens, setbacks. Setbacks, I think, should be different. So I don't know if you're just gonna take notes or what you were thinking.
I'll just take notes. And then
Okay.
I'll write one up in the same general structure as this.
Okay,
And by the next meeting, I will try to have this all arranged with the definitions stuck up into where the regular definitions go, and this put into its same structure as the rest of the book. Because we have, principal or permitted uses and
Yep.
and then conditional uses. We'll get that all put in the same style.
Yep.
Okay. The primary use, we don't have much of anything on, so we're
At
gonna
this
have
point,
to create it out of thin air here.
Yep.
Work on that.
A height restriction. Do we want to just keep it at 10 feet? Or does anybody want to go anything different?
From what I recall, the big solar fields, the big, ones that are not regulatable by zoning, like over by Cass Township and Washington Township, those huge ones that are going in. I think they said that when they're fully extended, they were like 16 feet tall. So I don't think anything above 16 is something you're probably gonna see. So don't pick a number like they can't be more than 20, because that's kind of worthless. I don't know what you want to make. I don't know if that's the standard thing, if they come lower or smaller or bigger. I don't know.
I mean, it could end up in the lot next to yours, theoretically, you know what I mean? So I'd probably keep it at 10 feet. That's what we said we were willing to live with for our neighbors
We're talking about primary use.
for primary use.
And the definition of primary is what?
Basically, somebody's got a solar farm and they're pumping it back into the grid and they're selling.
We're selling it to neighbors off site.
Right, it's different than principal though, or?
That's
That is
same.
principal.
Oh,
It's one,
Same thing.
Yeah.
primary and principal. So
Do we want to call it principal or primary?
we need to choose one or the other
Right.
instead of going back and forth.
I think I was going to say principal use because that's what we use that word further up, but I think it's now it's permitted uses, not principal use. So I don't know
Well,
why.
we have non-accessory, do you want to call it, or we have accessory, do you want to call this non-accessory?
I'm okay with that. We use the term accessory. elsewhere.
Accessory is what we've been using for
Right.
that first section that we went through.
And I feel like we've used it elsewhere in the book too, so I think it's keep it as a standard term maybe.
Non-accessory.
We're renaming it non-accessory.
Setbacks, do you want them to be the same as? Because we're basically talking about putting them on a lot that doesn't have any buildings on it or not there for those buildings. So do you want them to have the same kind of setbacks as we have with the ones? There aren't gonna be any front and backyards because it is. Yeah.
So you're saying what kind of setbacks?
Do you want the same kind like you have in the accessory in the?
I would have, I mean, this is, depending upon what we decide on size, this could be huge. Or it could be small, depending upon what you decide on size, but let's pretend you didn't put a limit on how big it could be.
Okay,
It's-
go more than 50 megawatts,
Right.
which
But-
is pretty good.
Yeah, that was, how many acres did we decide that was?
300 or something.
Yeah, so 300 acres next to your house. Okay,
As far as
do you
the eye
still
can
only
see.
want a 20, do you still only want a 20-foot setback? I don't,
No, I want it way back.
like 200 feet? I mean,
Well, it depends on how big you want them to be. I
Right.
mean, you are allowed to regulate anything up to 50, because then the power siting board takes over after that. So, but you can regulate and say that you're only permitting small. And we're talking 50 megawatts, not kilowatts.
That's
Yes.
supposed to be small.
Kilowatts are smaller than megawatts. I read that last time, I remember.
Yeah.
But
so, now I gotta think. What did I all do? I said a half acre would be just under 50 kilowatts. It was like 43 kilowatts. So, and then if you did that in 200-foot setbacks, it would require you to have like, I forget, it was roughly 6 acres of land to put. It would keep it away from anybody's use. It, you know, like being right next to your property, basically. So, I also thought we have a rule that has to be half a mile from residential use, which would be way further than any kind of,
residential use or residential districts?
I said use. I mean, again, I don't think anybody wants any of this right next to their house.
And you, what about distance between them?
Yeah,
I wonder, part of it's gonna be is like, where can they be placed, what zone areas?
I think only in I-2, probably,
that's
because
what I
they
have
are
there.
an industrial use.
Right, so I put that in there as well.
Right.
So if they have to be in I-2 district, first of all, I don't imagine, the fact that the city of Findlay only has one business that's in I-2 district, I don't imagine we'll have a huge I-2 district. So I don't think you're gonna be able to say, oh, we gotta be 10 miles apart, you know, because I don't think the district would be that big.
Right, so if they have to be in I-2, we don't have all terribly large I-2 districts, keeping on the idea that we wanna keep this farm ground. And I think that kind of helps, not having a huge I-2 district
Right.
and then having the proper setbacks.
I don't think you want just the setbacks, I think you do want to have some significant difference for the density or distance for the density.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna end up with microgrids of solar as well, which you've already found that can be a detriment.
Would the microgrids have to be in I-2?
They'd have to be distant from one another. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, you're probably gonna wanna look at it with wind. You know, to have the amount or the size, where you know, how far apart they can be. You don't want to have a field, a large field, and find out that there are 5 or 6 small fields that clump together that turn into a monster you don't wanna have. this is the place to be able to regulate that
Right.
and to try to get it under control. I don't think on page 34 there are setbacks for I-2, are there?
60 feet height, 60 feet minimum front, 40 feet on the side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have 40 across for all three
Oh,
columns.
did we change that?
I don't recall changing, that's for I2.
Oh,
I2.
I'm sorry, we're
It's
looking
still
at
60
I2.
at the front.
60
It's
is right.
60, 40, and we
Okay.
added 40 because there was none in the back.
Right.
So it'd be setback for I-2?
So, are we happy with that?
60.
I'm
40.
okay with those setbacks, but with those setbacks, I would still have something that's gotta be so far away from residential use.
Um,
And are you saying that Finley has a small IT district or?
When Matt was here the one time, he said the only business inside of Finley that is considered or in an I2 district, I think, was Cooper.
That's what I
He said, but
thought.
they probably don't even need to be I2, they could be I1. So my point is, if the city of Finley doesn't require a huge I2 district, we probably are not gonna have a huge area.
And I think we keep it away from residential. And
Yes.
it's small.
Once you look at the map, there's no way to keep it away from residential use.
Right.
There's houses everywhere. So we need to
Yeah.
protect those houses, and that's where we can, keep it so far away.
Especially, can you imagine if you had a big field like that, these things started leaking from a big hailstorm or something, I don't know. I mean, I think that's gonna affect residential drinking water.
Oh yeah, everybody's on a well. So once that reaches down,
Cadmium and lead. Now evidently there's some solar panels are less hazardous than others, and maybe it's a manufacturer issue as to how they choose to put it together, but cadmium and lead are the two things that I found that make it hazardous.
so what's a reasonable density? I mean,
For the distance from residential dwellings, in the current zoning stuff in the statutes in 519.211, it talks about limitations of zoning, what you can, can't limit. One of the things is telecommunications towers. You can limit them, but they have rules about it, which is kind of what's going on here. And they have, you can't construct a telecommunication tower within 100 feet of a residential dwelling without providing written notice and having them agree to it and all that. So if you want to choose 100 feet from a residential dwelling, there's a standard. I mean, it's already a precedent that that's something that was accepted.
100 feet isn't that much.
No, that's not
My
bad.
my house is 175 feet from the road.
I mean,
I think it's like 500 or 1,000 or something like that.
I'd say quarter of a mile. I mean, like nobody wants it next to their house, so.
Quarter of a mile, 1,300. Roughly.
So, do you want to say 1,000 feet, or is
I feel a lot better 1,000 than I would 100 or anything small.
Yeah. what people thinking?
That's it.
Are you comfortable with 1,000?
And we're talking about for primary, non-accessory principal.
Every
Cover them
definition.
all.
Have we already put in that it has to be in I2 then, somewhere that's written?
We did it then,
Yeah.
so at the very first paragraph. It's where it says are not permitted, we put in shall only be permitted in, as a conditional use in I2 districts.
Okay.
So I had pencil in it, does that work?
Need a height of 10 feet.
Okay. I 10 feet, setback as in I2, which would be 60, 40, and 40. District, only I2. Size, I don't have anything down for that. How big can they be?
I'm good with a half of an acre, but I'm up for, I don't know. A half of an acre is going to be around 50
The
kilowatts.
size of the I2 district is going to kind of determine that, right? I mean, this.
I mean, technically, they can fill the entire I2 district,
Right.
but if we do a density as well, any thoughts? I already said mine. I said a half of an acre.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's small, but
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we're looking to promote it.
You know, if it wasn't, we were all on wells. That, to me,
Be a
that's
big
one of the big things, because I keep looking at that map and I think, okay, let's say there's a huge damage done and, hundreds of, those two chemicals you were saying go down the ground, that doesn't affect people right around it. The wells a lot of times draw from a long way.
Sure, groundwater.
So that's my biggest fear, something that, for my conscience, I think it's a safety factor that you have to keep it small. So I'm not gonna argue the quarter acre.
Everybody I've talked to is got fears of this. So just like the wind.
There are some issues with when they're decommissioned, with where the panels can be taken. They can't be taken to a regular landfill. So they must have something in them that would be
Mhm.
a chemical not acceptable for a regular landfill. They have to go ones that pass a green of some sort.
And what were you saying, lead and something else?
Cadmium.
Cadmium.
So I'm good with a quarter acre.
Sure.
Quarter acre?
Yeah.
And how close to each other can they be?
How big, like when you go to set areas as the districts, do you kind of go by like a country block? Is that kind of the standard how you, I mean, like,
It depends. You can go by roads. You can go by property lines.
I'm just trying to think how big is this district going to be?
That's up to you guys. You can make the whole township in I2 if you want. I don't think it would be super popular, but
We're required to make something I2. Is that a true statement?
yes, yes,
Since we have it
Yes.
defined.
yes. I don't know that you have to, yeah, you do. Come on. District.
You do have to have an I2, and you have to, it has to be, is there a minimum? It has to be.
You, some townships, as they start to zone, if they already have things that fall into the category of I1 or I2, they take that area and make it I1 or I2, and they've got it, it's good. Then they don't have to add more.
Mhm.
Amanda Township is 100% agriculture.
There's a number of them.
Which and at the time, I have to tell them, you have, these are the things you have to do, and they were insistent. They have a couple of little spots of business and a couple little spots of residential, and the rest is all agriculture. They've never been challenged. I don't know that anybody wants to put industrial in Amanda Township. It just isn't set up for it. It's not got the infrastructure to make it feasible. You have the infrastructure to make it feasible. Yes. Which is why you've got to be a little more careful.
So-
When we're talking about distances away from bodies of water, rivers, creeks, that kind of stuff too. Because I'm looking at all the crooked blue lines there, there's a lot of,
One of the things that the Power Siting Board looks at pretty strenuously and has a lot of restrictions are the waterways and the wetlands and the things. Yeah, they're concerned with proximity to water and how it's being handled.
Real quickly, because we're still debating on that. I had 50 kilowatts, was a little bit more than what you get on a half of an acre, since we're at a quarter of an acre. Do you want to put a limit of 25 kilowatts max?
for what?
That's just the total kilowatts they can have for the entire solar farm. That site would only be allowed 25 kilowatts. I think we put it in there, it's just a limiting factor at that point.
So you're 25 kilowatts? Is that correct?
Yep. Screening,
I think they have to be, they would probably have to be completely fenced, not just screened.
okay, so
The Power Siting Board requires they be completely fenced.
then should we put the same thing in ours?
Probably, but the fencing that the Power Siting Board requires has to be able to allow small animals to pass under or through.
Okay.
They don't want, and anybody that's in very much of a solar field, they want to have it fenced because you don't want deer wandering through there or somebody's cows wandering in and destroying them.
Okay.
Goats destroy them too, apparently.
Oh, yeah, they jump quite high on them.
Yeah.
So
They want to cut rabbits and stuff that can go underneath, they're fine with that, so.
I say we put a note in there,
Yeah.
just to make sure that
Completely
happens.
fenced.
I will look at what the Power Siting Board required, the definition of the fence around
Yep.
what they do, and maybe you can use that kind of.
I think so. I think that makes sense.
Mhm.
We're back to density. I agree, ultimately, it's gonna come down to how big of an I2 district you make, which I think would be pretty small. But I think you should still throw a density thing on there just as a cover all.
Well, if your I2 district though is even, 5 acres, you could end up with, 20 microgrids. Think about it. All daisy chained together, and you don't want that. That's what part of the reason that you can control wind and solar, is to keep that from happening.
So do you just say 1 mile in between?
Yeah.
And if we go with pretty small acreage, then it makes it so you can't.
You can do that,
Microgrid.
or you can do, I was thinking, like with, houses, they say, you can have 1 2-acre building lot for every so many acres you own. You have 1/4 acre, but then they could end up with them all clumped together. So I'd rather have the actual distance between them. And it would be from edge of lot to edge of lot, not from edge of solar field to edge of solar field. Because with that extra 1,000 feet in there, that's 2,000 more feet that they come off of. That's more than a 1/4 mile closer together.
You lost me on some of that.
You have your spot here, they have a 1,000-foot setback. If we say it can't be within,
What has a 1,000-foot setback?
isn't that what you guys said?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
1,000.
You want a
Oh.
1,000-foot
Yeah.
setback?
From
No, we said
residential-
from residential.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Residential,
Oh, okay,
1,000 foot from.
then I'm not as worried about it, but I still will identify the distance that they have to be apart, measured from lot line to lot line.
Yep.
That way, we don't have any ambiguity with something being on one closer or not centered, nothing's gonna get centered in the middle of the lot, that never happens.
Right.
So, lot line to lot line, 1
Wow.
mile,
Yeah. The last thing that I would add from my notes is a decommissioning plan.
Yes, yes.
Is there a way to require, like, if it costs X amount of money, that they have to put that same amount of money into, did it cost that much to put it up? They gotta put that same amount into an account that like the township has access to at a later date?
Yeah, the county, like for the landfill, they have to put into, a financial assurance trust fund. And it's based on the calculation from the EPA, for how long it's gonna still be open, for how much it will take to close it when it,
Right.
because there's a lot of maintenance that has to be done with landfill. For some of these things though, like subdivisions, if you want, to do a subdivision, when you're filing, you have to post a bond that's held by the, county engineer until you are completely built everything that you're supposed to build for the roads and the public infrastructure part of it. And if you don't, we use that bond to build it. So we could require that they post a bond and have the bond active and, not expired, and that if they don't decommission and take care of it themselves, we get to use the bond to decommission it. It's better than having an account, because we can't control their bank accounts and they can draw it
Right.
out. And if we want to do a trust kind of thing, that gets very complicated and it's more sophisticated than I think maybe we want to do. But a zoning inspector can hold a bond.
And I don't know the terms for sure. We were talking with a friend. They've got family in Colorado. The company went out of business, and now this stuff just sits there, and there's nothing. Would a bond still?
Mhm.
They would.
Because the bond is in your hands.
Okay.
They have to
Perfect.
post it with you, give it to you, which is an insurance policy that they have to keep up. We know, because we're named on it, that if they let it lapse, and then we go after them to get it redone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the bond would be a good idea.
As long as that's the.
And we have to figure out how much bond though it would be for the decommissioning. I have no clue. No
Yeah.
clue.
Yeah, I mean, there's X amount of money, the same, similar amount of money to put it up and take it down, but then you gotta dispose of
The
everything.
disposal's gonna be an issue. In 30
Right.
years, we're gonna have a lot of solar
Yes.
panels needing to be disposed of somewhere.
Right.
Yes.
I keep hoping that by then there'll be technology to recycle them into something usable, but
Sure.
as of now, I don't think there is.
Sure.
Because that's why they leave them sit there. They don't know what to do with them.
That's correct.
Which is a terrible strategy.
Yeah. That's not a good business. Well, it's a great business strategy.
Right.
But it's not a good
Terrible for people.
environmental strategy.
So do we have to come up with what that amount is
I do.
at this point?
Yeah. Not today, but I think before you do that.
Before we finalize this? So,
That's a bit tough.
We're gonna have to find a resource for some of this stuff.
I mean, if you hired like a environmental company to come take them out, I think that would be 10, 20 times what it costs to put
Yes.
it in. So, yeah. Depending on what disposal is at that point.
Correct.
I will, tomorrow at the office, hopefully there'll be somebody taller than me who can pull the big boxes that I have up there, put them up on shelves, I can't reach them anymore, that we did with the, solar stuff, those solar fields up by Washington and Cass. I'll see if there's anything in there that we saw with the power sighting board stuff that had to do with how they determined it. Maybe we can, or at least I can get an idea of who we can call there and ask some questions. They have engineering staff like you wouldn't believe.
Okay.
And so they might be able to give us some direction.
Okay. that's all my notes from non-accessory.
I think those are pretty much all the issues you need to hit on.
Okay? You got enough to be armed?
Yeah, I can write something up.
Okay.
It won't be too garbled, you'll have to unsort it. We got nothing on wind.
Well, we also have nothing about energy storage. this
Yeah, I
second.
have no idea about that either.
We just crossed out battery.
So.
Yeah.
Did we actually read through this last time?
We at least read through enough that we decided to take off the
Okay.
battery, the word battery. So.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I've read,
I mean,
do we want to reread through it, I guess is the, you know what, we did read through this.
Yeah, we did, because
I
I have
remember
notes.
taking a couple notes too. So,
And disabled stuff.
so we probably need to change Washington Township.
Probably.
good start.
Yeah,
Now, do we change where it says I-1? and
That would be I2 also.
Yeah, store it where you,
Where are we?
the top paragraph of section 22.
Oh, okay. Wind energy conservation facilities? What is a wind energy conservation facility?
You went on, did you go to,
yeah,
you went to 23.
she jumped to the
Oh, to the end?
She went to the wind.
Oh, we're looking at
Did we make
The
any,
storage.
section 22.
my notes, must be on site to where the power was generated. I made a note that said non-accessory or not permitted, but I think that's not permitted is something that Cindy frowns upon. So. Can we make a note that it is accessory to wind and solar? That way it's kind of controlling when you could do this. I don't know that much about energy storage facilities.
So we can make it battery or energy storage facilities related to wind and solar? Or how about energy storage related to wind and solar facilities?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sure. We did go
Gotta
across.
stop abbreviating so many things because I couldn't figure out what my abbreviations meant when I was editing.
We did go across this because I have a note that says hydrogen equivalent of megawatts for capacity. So that is something we were definitely discussing.
But if we limit the energy storage facilities only to those related to wind and solar, the hydrogen storage facilities won't be permitted.
So they're not permitted if there's not section 1? Is that what you're
Well, they wouldn't be regulated under this. And again, hydrogen storage facility is not wind or solar.
Correct.
And that's all that you guys were given the authority to regulate,
saying? Oh, okay.
other than an industrial use. So if somebody wants to put in a hydrogen storage facility, whatever that is, they would have to, it would definitely fall under an I2 kind of situation. They would come, this, because we have wind and solar under I2, it would be where we would punt it to I2. And then they would have to come in for conditional use to go through the whole process. So, but it's not regulated like this is wind and solar. It'd be regulated like any other business in an I2. Any other industrial business.
One thing I wish I knew is like the energy storage ones. I always think of batteries. That's
Right.
how most people
Right.
do it, but like, are there other ways of doing that? Because battery is a great way to have a huge building full of batteries.
And that's why we say
Sounds
get rid of
explosive, but explosive.
I mean, you see
Well,
some
car
batteries
fires
are.
Lithium tends to be unstable.
But but that's why we got rid of the word battery, just in
Right.
case there is something
A
else
different story.
that covers it. So, and we still have the 1,000 feet away, setback from property lines to be 1,000 feet, so. Do not, the last paragraph where it says non-accessory, again, it says battery, energy storage facility, I would get rid of the word battery.
I'm taking the word battery out of everything, I think.
Yeah, but it says, capacity of more than 10 kilowatts. And I would say a max of 25 kilowatts or something, I'd put a limit on it,
Which one's that under the non-accessory?
non-accessory. Or principal or primary, or whatever you want to call it.
So, of not more than 20 kilowatts. Is that what you said?
I said 25 because that matched up with what we said before, but
So So instead of saying of more than 10, we want to say of not more than 20?
sure.
Is it 20 you said or
There's-
25?
Or 25.
Maximum of 25.
25. So we won't have that minimum of 10. We want to have a not maximum of 25. It says right now, it says a capacity of more than 10.
Right.
We want to change that to say a capacity of not more than 25.
Right.
Change it from a minimum to
To
a
a
max.
Okay.
The more you read it, and think through this, you think an IT district is not really an asset to the township, it's more of a liability.
Yeah.
I mean, where, it's like if somebody came along and said, hey, be careful, you do something here that it's gonna sometimes start leaking. This is probably gonna happen, we don't know when. And you may or may not have to deal with the cleanup.
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what? How?
Why do we want this?
Right. I mean, it'd be different. Technology was different. It was safer. It was.
You would probably want to make like around the landfill an I-2 district, because it currently exists. And there's at least one business around the landfill that would definitely, it's not a county business, they rent property from the county, they have their business on it. It would definitely be an I-2.
Any other thoughts on energy storage facilities? Moving on to wind. Oh, Miss Zoe.
With a true definition
of what?
of thermal power.
Oh.
Just so I was way left field that way. A thermal power station is a type of power station in which heat energy is converted to electrical energy and steam generated cycle. Heat is used to boil water in a large pressure vessel to produce high pressure steam, which drives a steam turbine connected to an electrical generator. Use steam boilers.
You want that. Just saying, because
Can
you
we
cannot
regulate
regulate that.
Okay,
So
That's-
I just wanted to be true that.
thank
It's
you.
not something we can put in.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Am I missing? No, they just don't have a title up here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I think
What's
it's
up?
just, yeah, this wind part that was added to Washington.
So it would be section 23.
that's what mine says.
Mine doesn't.
Mine's not, mine's the one that says draft that you said is some other.
That's Liberty's.
Oh, it depends on which paper you have. Okay. It's there, but not there.
Right.
You know,
Please, if you don't mind.
Section 23, wind energy conversion facilities. The purpose of this article is to provide regulations for the safe and effective construction and operation of wind energy conversion facilities in Allen Township, subject to reasonable restrictions which will preserve the public health and safety. Wind energy conversion facilities are a conditional use in the I-2 industrial district. The total WECS height shall not exceed 60 feet. No person shall cause, allow, or maintain the use of a wind energy conversion facility without first having obtained a conditional zoning certificate from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Application for conditional zoning certificate shall be submitted to the zoning inspector and forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Required setbacks, the minimum setback from any property line shall be 175 feet of the total system height.
175%.
Oh, I'm sorry, 175%. Definitions. Total wind energy conversion system height. The highest point measured in feet above the grade at the base of it that any part of it reaches during normal operation. Wind energy conversion system. A system designed to convert the wind's kinetic energy into an alternative form of energy, including electrical, thermal, or mechanical energy.
First thing in that, at the end of the first paragraph there, if it's conditional use, would it go to us, not the zoning appeals?
Correct.
So that's something.
Conditional uses come to you because you're the group who writes the legislation. You're the most likely to be able to interpret its meaning. Zoning appeals are the ones that are exceptions to this, and like the variance or an exception or an appeal from something you guys determine.
Okay. So you'll take care of changing that out. All right. Setbacks. Upon some research, power siding board, there was exhibit filing that we located, and they say for a Nordex Delta 4000 wind turbine. For the record, it has a height of like just under 600 feet to just over to almost 800 feet. But they're
100
saying,
feet?
what's that?
You said 100 feet?
800 feet.
6 days. You're
Six
talking about
days.
600 foot to 800.
So just under 600 up to 587 to 780 are the numbers. So, but the proposed ones are 600 feet, so they would fall into a very similar category. The from Nordex themselves, for thunderstorms, they recommend being 1 kilometer away, which is 3,280 feet. So
away from what?
From it.
setback from it. So
2/3 of a mile. So
Close to,
so yeah.
it's over half.
So if the manufacturer is recommending that, I think we should take that into consideration that they're saying.
is that based on the height of that?
It's got to be based on the height, I would
Yeah.
assume.
But
So
that's
if
like-
we're only going 60 feet.
Right,
We
Yeah.
can have
Right.
maybe a less aggressive.
Yes.
right, but
Correct.
for sure, but that's like 500% of the feet, not 175% is my point.
Okay.
So
So 5 times. So if you
5
do
times the height.
then you're at 300 roughly.
So I think for setbacks, it should still be at 5 times the height or whatever would be a good place to be.
300. Costing out 300 feet, is that right?
Well, it's percentage is what I would do,
Oh, you do
depending upon the
percentage.
height.
And just for,
But we're seeing it will not exceed 60 feet.
Okay, but if they put up a 30-foot one, then it's not 300 anymore.
I think we should say 5 times the height of the total system height.
Yeah.
That way,
And is that all?
when you put 500%, that gets very confusing for people.
Right.
If you say
Okay.
5 times, I think it's easier to.
That's fine.
And that's rear, sides, front.
That's setback. It's every,
It says from any property line, so that's all.
That's the side.
Are you gonna have, different things for accessory and non-accessory? Like
My-
we did with solar?
I'm open to that. I kind of laid it out that it would still follow the heights from the districts so that for,
Heights. So instead of 60 feet, the heights for the district.
which would be 60 feet for
Alright.
I-2, but if somebody wanted to do like a residential one and they were in A1,
Because the accessory could be in residential district.
right,
It's the only the non-accessory we have to, that we're putting into
I2,
I2.
right,
Mhm.
So we probably want to run down through the same list we did and sort of parallel it with what we did with solar, but have it applicable to wind, because it's
Sure.
different.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay,
is, yeah, from my notes, so.
Okay.
I kind of went through a bunch of different zoning books and have just like topics they covered. They had like notice, like letting the neighbors know, people within 300 feet of where it would go or whatever, like a certain distance, know that, hey, this is going in.
That's a provision that's in the statute for cell towers. They have to send letters, notices within 14 days, that kind of stuff. So there's precedent for saying, yeah, let's ask for notices.
So we could do that if we want to do that. I think the notice.
Okay, we're talking about accessory use now, right? Let's go through that first and then go to non-accessory like we did.
Is that how you want to do it?
That's how we did last time.
That's fine.
But I wanted to take a quick break before we do that. I feel like the tin man.
So for accessory use, that's going to be more residential. A residential use would be accessory use. So
Or a single business having something.
for sure, it's not a wind farm is my point. It's going to be a
Right.
smaller application.
Where we limit the kilowatts or
Will we limit the height, which ultimately is going to, we can still limit kilowatts as well if we can decide on that. So the question becomes, what kind of distance? Who do you have to let know if you're going to put one up? People within. I mean, if we go with a height based upon what's in the area in bulk, you're going to be looking at a wind turbine that's going to be 30 feet tall. So you're not talking what you see currently. This is what I'll call residential use at that point.
it kind of almost helps to know how tall are those?
The ones that are standing are 400 feet
Okay, 400.
or thereabouts.
Gotcha.
So you're talking much shorter at this point for an accessory use. And you have to let all of your neighbors know within a quarter mile. I mean, 30 feet is as tall as your house. I mean, home builder
Yeah,
is I mean, for a
Right.
rough number,
right.
you're not talking crazy high at that point.
No, you're right.
This is more residential use, so
Just one single one.
And so would you have a 5 times setback, 150 feet? Or was that just for?
well,
That's-
I think, you know, if it's regulated at 30 feet, maybe you go 250 2.5 times, I'm gonna go percent again, 2.5 times instead for a, so it would be a smaller setback at that point, but still, you still want a reasonable setback,
Right.
so.
The thing that's set back for accessory use is 2.5 times.
If you did 2.5 times and it was 30 feet tall, that would be 60, that'd be like 75 feet. And then at that point, if somebody wanted to put one on their residential or like an A1 lot, chances are you would be able to do it, because we said the A1 lot, future A1 lots, I should say, because if you make them 200 feet wide, 75 feet would be somewhere in the middle off the setbacks, you could put one on an A1 residential lot, building lot. So if somebody wanted to do it, they'd have the ability to do it at that point. So the
What's
question,
the height that you get on that?
we said 2.5 times
That's for the setback, right?
for
What's 2.5 times of what? What's the maximum?
the maximum would be 30 feet
30,
falling along
okay.
the area involved.
Is that feasible? Do they actually exist that size?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm thinking, okay. if
I'm
it's
sure
30 feet,
I'm sure you can get something. I mean, I've seen stuff that was mounted right on the corner of somebody's shed, and it only stood up this much above the shed. So, I mean,
Okay. What about maximum output?
at the end of the day, do I care what the output is?
That's why I thought,
No, I don't think you,
Well,
or do we have to identify it?
you don't really have to identify. It could be up to 5 megawatts then.
I mean, if they made it for
But you
more,
would never get that on a 30-foot.
No, as I understand it, like the current wind turbines that are out there, 3 of them are like 4.6
Right. They're like
megawatts.
1.5 megawatts per one up there.
but if they made it more efficient, to me, it's like, okay,
Right.
I wouldn't care if this guy had
Right.
one, and this guy put exactly the same, but put out twice the power. I wouldn't care
You
about
don't care.
that.
Right. So it's more you're regulating the
More
size and
efficient.
its
Yeah.
place, not
Right.
the output.
The size.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of head nods on the size is the problem.
If you keep your miniature, they're okay. Go giant, forget it.
So,
Okay.
so how about for notice? Do we need to let everybody know within a certain radius?
At least let the neighbors know.
That's kind of my point. Let the neighbors
Yeah.
know you're putting it up.
Maybe adjoining properties or something like that.
Yeah, right.
With the notice, does anybody get a say? Like you said, the cell tower or whoever. Just because you tell them, do they get any kind of say, or is it just peace of mind that they know it's happening?
I think they have the ability to object.
Okay.
There's not a lot of stuff to do. It is mostly just making them good neighbors and not spraying on anybody. So, what good is notice if people can't?
That's
true.
Say something about it, yeah.
So they would have the ability to object.
Do you want them to have the ability to object?
You don't wanna cram anything.
I can't think what good reason is, but of course that's because we're set here in the perfect world scenario.
If the light flicker, I've heard this argument, the light flicker, if you have like an autistic child that probably wouldn't be great for them, Is it different off of a 30-foot versus a 400-foot? For sure. I don't know, but
I see what you're saying. If they have a security light right behind it, here's the blaze, and
Yeah.
here's the neighbor's house.
That wouldn't be good.
That's something they come to the zoning commission and you look at that stuff. And you'll have to go through I think if it's gonna come to a zoning commission meeting for a conditional use, you'll need to send out notices as a zoning commission 10 days before your hearing to everybody that surrounds the property that's being, no matter what the issue is. I mean, when you have a,
That's what you have to do.
so surrounding property owners need to know that you're gonna have a hearing on that. So,
So if you have a hearing, do they have the ability to object at that point?
well, they can give you their opinions and you have to
And then-
take them under consideration, but they can't veto what somebody else wants to do. I mean, if you have rules that this is what can be allowed and you have conditions that you put on it, you may always have some neighbor that's not gonna be happy. You
Right.
can't give them the power to take that away from another property owner if they're following all the rules. But they do have the right to come and tell you why they think it's gonna hurt them. Some people they'll give you a legitimate argument. Some may not, you don't know. I've
And then
been
we
to
still
a lot of hearings where I just don't want that by me, well, that
Sorry.
doesn't work. Yeah,
Right.
Or ones that just show up.
I don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that, but. There, by default, people will get notice.
Okay.
Because it's gonna be a conditional use.
Okay.
Now, if you put on it there that it's requirement of the applicant to give the notice, it saves you guys some hassle and trouble.
Sure. I like that point.
Your future zoning inspector will really like that.
Okay. Do that. I read in a couple of them where it says it must meet electric code, building code, stuff like that. Is that stuff
We
you
have that.
actually have to spell out?
We have that up in here. The
For-
design of the solar energy system must conform to all applicable industry standards as well as all local power and utility regulations and standards.
Okay.
So
Are
we
you
can
go-
put
are you
that
go-
same thing in here.
Are you going to start from like the solar kind of build?
I'll take those kind of things out of there.
Okay.
But I think you do need to have that it has to comply to particular standards.
Okay.
Because, it's not our job to police what somebody does on their property if it's gonna be something that turns out to be dumb. But we don't want to give permits for something that they do that's gonna burn down their house and then their neighbor's house because they didn't follow any standards. Sometimes the DIYs go,
Push it my house.
speaking from experience.
Another section I've seen is utility notification. So contacting the utility company. If you're going to sell back any power, I assume you have.
They have to have
You're already-
agreements in place with the utility companies. And
So-
we don't wanna be involved in that, no.
So just leave that out.
Um,
I mean, they're not going to just randomly wire into the power line.
Well, you
They're gonna-
probably wouldn't say.
not for long.
So they're going to have to be in contact.
Yeah,
with
they'll
that.
have to, yeah.
Okay,
But that
so-
would, I think, fall under the, local power and utility regulations and standards.
which would be backed up with that previous. Okay. Okay. Where do you go to next? I've seen aesthetics. They got to be painted white or gray.
You can't zone aesthetics.
Perfect. That's done.
They can be purple if they want.
How about a required like maintenance schedule?
I don't know that you can't micromanage into the day-to-day. With zoning, you can do the decommission stuff, but how they're doing it in between, it just makes a difference for when they get to the decommission time. We can do the checking in, make sure it's still producing power and they're still using it like we do at the solar fields, but we can't, I think that goes a bit beyond your scope.
Yeah.
People will push back on that.
Okay. Are you looking at these all from a accessory and non-accessory point of view like that?
Some, yeah.
Okay.
Some will never apply to non-accessory.
I'm kind of checking them off as things we've gone through, and I'm like, well, does it apply? does it somehow apply to one but not the other is all
Right.
I'm asking. I've seen warning signs, you know, I don't know,
Warning of what?
the electrical power or whatever. You don't sound too.
I don't,
There's permit processes, so like, what you require, which falls into the solar had something very similar.
Mhm.
So,
and we'll require that they get all the applicable permits to be able to produce what they're producing.
so that'll be that. How about like noise ratings?
You can probably,
It doesn't have
you can, regulate noise.
Yep.
You can't regulate times of use of noise. You can't say that you can't have any noise after 10 p.m. You can't do that. I mean, there's some pretty significant case law about that. Apparently when, Kings Island, no, not Kings Island, Six Flags went in up by Cleveland, by Aurora, I guess. The neighbors were not happy with how late the coasters were running and the lights were on, and they tried to zone it and they lost at the state level.
From a lot of the ones I was looking at, it looks like Green Creeks, there's this 60 decibels. Alpena is 55 decibels, and I think this was Shawnee Township was 50 decibels.
What is a normal amount of sound output from one?
I don't.
I don't either. I don't know what number to say.
So
And how are we gonna measure it?
Part of that would be handy to have, like, let's say somebody's got a bad bearing, I don't know how and it's squealing, it squeals all night long.
right,
If there's not any way that we can say, hey, you gotta fix that.
You gotta grease it.
Whereas at least if there's some kind of decibel thing, and
Yeah.
you're in your yard,
I think for me, part of the permitting would be to have documentation on what you're putting in, and I would think that they all say this unit is this many decibels, or they would have a rating of it.
But we need to know what our maximum that we'll permit is. I think we have to have that in there.
Right.
And I have not a clue. I don't even know where to find that. I suppose we could probably Google the manufacturers.
Zoe,
and see
you want
what
it?
they say.
I know there's like a certain amount of decibels that you're not supposed to consecutively have
Yeah.
on a day to day.
Can you do
There
a
are
Google
certain
search on what?
decibels that-
That's
I
what-
do know that you can't, over 80 is medium.
Right.
And that's just, like a short bit, so if there's like a
60
decibel range.
Doing a Google search on it, 60 is conversation, is my understanding. So just imagine your neighbors outside talking all the time except for it's not talking.
We were at the Power Sighting Board, they had the sound engineers testifying, and they were saying the decibels that come off with the sound of the hum on, and they were like 5 or something like that. And they're like, well, how much is that? And the guy goes, well, somebody your age wouldn't hear it. I'm like, oh,
Nice.
35 to 45 decibels is the normal, the average output of a land-based utility scale wind turbine.
But that's from 300 meters away.
300 meters.
Yeah.
that's a long way.
That's a long ways away.
Where are you measuring it from? The edge of your setback?
yeah.
Probably from the setback would be a good place to measure from.
What if you have multiple?
And what's-
They would add up.
And they all get together at the same time.
It almost seems like if you're the one that, it's not yours, it's your neighbor's. It seems like if you stand on your property line, it shouldn't be so loud. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's loud in here and they've got 20 acres, I don't care how loud it is there, it's at my property line.
Right.
That I don't wanna hear it,
Right.
Right.
so,
It's for protecting you from your neighbor.
right, and that way I guess maybe
Deb brings
somebody.
up a good point. What if somebody put up 5 of them? It's additive. you know, it's gonna get louder and louder.
Especially when they get in the sync together,
Yep.
and they do.
First-hand knowledge.
First-hand knowledge, yes.
Well, you could alleviate that by putting a maximum on how much output they can have. Like if, you know, you don't want them to end up with 4 or 5 on one property for an accessory use, you could limit the amount of output they're allowed to produce, and then it'll cut down on how many they'll have. And again, we're in a realm of I have no idea what those numbers are or how to do that.
Really quick, according to Wind Measurement International, they did some studies on this, it looks, and they say it is around 96 to 101 decibels from 0 feet. So that's point of origin, what the decibel output is. Goes down on.
So you need
further
earplugs
over.
underneath it.
Huh?
So you need, yeah, thanks for playing along. So I said, so you need earplugs underneath it. What? Do you hear you? You've been around wind turbine too much?
It says no higher than 80 decibels for adults, no higher than 75 for children, 40 hours a week.
That's what I was gonna say. And I don't know if you have 245 decibels side by side, does that mean it's 90 or is it still 40?
I don't think it adds up that way.
Right.
I can't remember how they add up.
Right, that's why I think isn't the big concern is your property.
I stayed away from physics.
So, for accessory use, I'd probably get, first of all, I think it matters what it is at the setback distance, because ultimately that's your neighbor's property.